Welcome back to No Dumb Questions, the Insurify podcast about straight talk on coverage, claims, and savings. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Julia. Today's question, how does car insurance work?
Exactly.
How does it work?
How does it even work? So whether you're a brand new driver, you're switching companies, or you're just comparing quotes, understanding how insurance works is the key to saving money.
Yeah. And honestly, Sarah and I are here because no one really teaches you this stuff. We happen to know it, right? Because here we are at Insurify. But yeah, we kind of all just sign up for a policy, we start driving, and we just hope we picked the right thing. That's how I was.
Yeah. And hopefully we'll be able to save you guys 3 years of reading about insurance every single day with this episode.
That is the goal. We are doing you a kindness.
Yes.
You're very welcome.
Yes. We're very noble. Today we're going to break down the components of your policy, how car insurance works, like when you need to submit a claim, and what your coverage really pays for.
Yes. And plus, as always, we'll answer some common questions and bust some myths that confuse a lot of drivers.
All right, let's get into it.
Let's do it. So before we talk about how car insurance works, let's decode some of the big terms you'll see. If you've listened to other episodes, you'll probably be familiar with many of these, but that's okay. Review is good.
Review is good. All right. So we're going to start with auto insurance, right? It's a contract where you pay a premium with an insurer, and then the insurer pays for covered losses if something happens, of course, after you pay your deductible, and we'll get into that in a minute. So it protects your wallet, it protects others, and allows you to legally drive. So all states except New Hampshire require car insurance.
And even New Hampshire has some related requirements.
Yes.
So don't think y'all are off the hook, New Hampshire. But anyways, getting a little bit more into what an auto insurance policy could include. So full coverage versus liability only. This is something we've talked about in past episodes. So liability only, that is more the legal minimum, right? So that's what you're thinking, like New Hampshire and other states. Most states require liability insurance. So that protects others and not your vehicle. So if you were to cause an accident, that would cover your liability in that, but it does not pay to repair your vehicle. And then full coverage includes liability, but also has additional coverages, most importantly, collision and comprehensive. So collision, kind of like it sounds like, covers repairs to your vehicle after a crash, and comprehensive coverage kind of covers like all the rest, quote unquote, right?
Yeah.
So non-crash stuff, it's theft, it's weather, it's a falling tree branch, and things like that. So that is what will fill out that full coverage policy.
Yeah. So the deductible is what you pay out of pocket before your insurance kicks in for collision or comprehensive claims. You don't have a deductible if you only have liability insurance. And then your premium is the amount you pay. So you either pay it like monthly or you can pay it in full when you sign up for your policy. And this is just to maintain your insurance policy. The amount changes depending on your coverage levels, your driving history, and the insurer you choose.
Yes. So speaking of coverage levels, right? So coverage limits is another thing that you'll see or you'll think about in relation to your policy. So basically, kind of like it sounds like a limit, that is the maximum that your insurer will pay for a claim. And often how you'll see this, maybe online in an article is you'll see like 25/50/25 or different numbers, which would basically signify $25,000 worth of property damage liability, $50,000 worth of bodily injury liability, and then $25,000 per person. So that's how you'll often see it in regards to liability coverage. It might look a little different, not like in that fun little format, for full coverage or comprehensive, but coverage limits exist for all types of coverage.
Yeah. I remember when I first saw this, I was like, what does that even mean? So
yeah,
definitely. That's what that means when you see like number/number/number.
Yes.
All right. And then finally, we have the claim, which is what car insurance is for, right? So you submit after an accident to request for reimbursement, and then the insurer will reimburse you if the claim is covered.
Exactly.
So now that we have these basics down, let's actually answer, how does car insurance work?
So car insurance is fairly simple once you break it down, which is kind of what we're about here at No Dumb Questions. So you pay a premium, the company takes on your financial risk. If something happens, they help you cover the costs.
Yeah. So actually getting car insurance and getting your coverage. First, you're going to choose your coverage types. So that's going to be that full coverage or liability. You're going to choose your limits and your deductible. So the limit, like we said, is at like 25, 50, 25. You can increase those limits, but you cannot go below your state legal minimum.
Exactly.
And then your deductible, like we said, is the amount you pay out of pocket. So it's usually like $500, $1,000, $1,500 and up. Then you can pay your premium either monthly or in full. And then if you cause an accident, liability coverage pays for the other driver's injuries and their car, while full coverage pays if your car is damaged. So that's that collision and comprehensive coverage we went over.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk a little bit about claims.
Yeah.
I feel like, because this can be a really confusing part of the process. So kind of starting at the beginning, besides being legally required, car insurance's purpose is to help you when something happens, right? Which is when something happens is when you would submit a claim basically for that coverage to apply to what happened.
Yes.
Right. So you would do that by remaining calm. It's going to be okay. But gathering all of your information. This means your policy number. This would mean like the date and time of the accident or the incident, whatever that is. As detailed a description of the accident as you can provide.
Yeah.
Photos and videos are always really great to have. That can make things a lot smoother, having that like really kind of black and white evidence. It's always good when something happens to kind of slow down and try to remember to take photos and things when you're in that situation. And then even if it might feel awkward, the names and contact information of any other people involved in that incident and any witnesses if possible. Yeah. Again, this is just something that even if it feels weird in the moment, could really, really help you out after the fact. And you don't want to be like kicking yourself after being like, ugh, like I wish I did this, right? So sometimes this could involve filing a police report, right? If there's a severe damage to a vehicle or property or injury or a theft occurred. So that would usually be when you would involve law enforcement.
Yeah.
And then you need to contact your insurer, right? So you've gathered your information, maybe you filed a police report, and now you can call them on the phone. A lot of insurers nowadays, you can kind of just submit all this through an app on your smartphone.
Super easy.
Which I've done before, and it's usually pretty straightforward. Most insurers have like pretty user-friendly apps nowadays, or you can do it online, of course, like through their website. And kind of the name of the game here is to just get that info in as soon as you can. You know what I mean? Like, be safe, be okay, but the sooner you get it in, the sooner it will all get sorted out, right? Yes. And then after you submitted that information, you will work with your insurance company, with the insurance adjuster specifically, who is going to investigate that damage, look at the evidence you've provided, possibly contact other parties involved, right, to determine the payout to you or to other parties if it's liability related. And then, hey, you accept your payout, hopefully, right? Or someone, you know, and if it's what you expected, yay, hooray,
let's go.
Onward you go, right? And if you, for some reason, feel that it's unfair or it just isn't necessarily accounting for all of the evidence that you provided, you can contest it.
Yes.
Yeah. So it is important to remember here, like you were saying, Sarah, that payouts will only be up to policy limits.
Yes.
Which is why that is important, that while state minimum requirements exist and they may at times be enough, you know, to cover your liability, it is often worth getting at least a little bit more liability coverage, because basically the way to think about it is that if you are liable for anything above that limit that you have in your policy, that's on you, right? Like that's it. It's very simple. Anything above that, your insurer will not cover. So a good example of this, I think, is Florida, because they have a relatively low property damage liability limit of just $10,000 and $10,000 in personal injury protection as well. So the payout will only be up to that $10,000. So if you cause damage or injury that is $15,000 or $20,000, if you have only the state minimum limit, you are going to be on the hook for that extra $5,000 or $10,000 or more.
Yes.
Another thing to keep in mind here is what they call like a total loss in the industry, but we all call like having your car totaled, right?
Yes.
When something is declared a total loss, it cannot be repaired. It would just have to be replaced. Keep in mind here that policies can cover this differently.
Yes.
In terms of actual cash value, which you'll sometimes see abbreviated as ACV, versus replacement cost coverage. So that actual cash value would be the value of your car minus depreciation.
Yes.
And remember, I feel like this is like a common saying that like your car loses value like as soon as you drive it off the lot, right? I feel like people say that. That is basically the message here, that even if you've only had your car for a short period of time, or you're driving like a super old, you know, it's been in the family for generations kind of car, if your car is totaled and you only have actual cash value coverage, you are only going to be paid out the current value of that vehicle, not the value it would actually cost you to replace it today.
Yes.
Right? So new car replacement coverage will pay for a new edition of your car. So those are some really important distinctions to keep in mind.
Yeah. And I'd like to clarify that actual cash value is like the industry standard.
Yes.
So like, I think both of our policies have actual cash value.
Yes.
I mean, it's fairly common to have new car replacement coverage. So if that's something that you're really interested in and you're looking for, pursue that in your insurance company. But actual cash value is going to be the industry standard.
Right. And I think that's a good point that it's like an additional coverage and add-on, something you would have to, like you said,
pay
seek
for
out.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we have a very special guest that I would like to introduce. Our lovely producer, Riley, is here to talk about her accident story that happened last year and how it worked with her car insurance. So welcome, Riley.
Hi, guys. It feels weird to be speaking and not just listening to you. But yeah, no. So I had gotten into an accident about a year ago now. I had only been at Insurify for 3 months, I think. So I was still very, very new to the insurance world. And this is kind of how I figured out the whole process. Hopefully this is how you figure out the whole process and you don't get into an accident yourself. But basically I was on my way to work and I was just in a narrow street and kind of turned into this big oil tanker and got the bumper of the truck stuck in the side of my car and it tore a whole thing. And it was very low stakes. Nobody was hurt. My liability insurance didn't need to cover anything. The truck got a little bit of my paint on its bumper, but
That's not bad.
It didn't harm him at all, I promise. It was mostly me. So it was all on my car, which thankfully I have full coverage car insurance. So my car is going to be covered. But obviously there's a lot that goes into that, which you guys just got into. So when I was done getting out of this situation and going into work, I filed my claim, took it to the body shop. I found out that the damage on my car was about between $4,000 and $4,500, which is a lot of money, especially for someone in their first job out of college. Not too much money saved up. That would have been a big hit.
Yes.
But on my policy, I have full coverage insurance. So once I pay my deductible, they are able to cover that. And I have enough of a policy limit to
Cover that. Yeah.
Right? So I had an $1,000 deductible. And then the rest of it, my insurance company covered. Thankfully, I had accident forgiveness on my policy, which is something that you don't always think about, but is super nice to have because you don't see those rates skyrocket after you get into one accident. This had been my first major accident that involved insurance. Yeah, my rates didn't go up because of accident forgiveness. I also luckily had rental car insurance. So they covered me getting a rental car for I want to say 3 or 4 weeks that my car was in the shop.
Wow.
It did take a lot longer than I wanted it to, and yeah, it ended up being totally okay.
Yeah.
It was scary in the moment. I don't recommend getting into an accident for anybody. But once I went through the process, I knew what was going on. I talked to my insurance agent. I talked to the adjuster. All in all, not the end of the world because I have those coverages on my insurance.
Yeah.
Especially those add-ons like accident forgiveness and rental car insurance were super, super helpful to me because out of pocket those costs get high.
Definitely.
That's such a good argument and example showing how some of these add-ons really can be worth it.
For sure. And a lot of the time those add-ons don't cost an arm and a leg, right?
Yeah.
True.
So, if it's like an extra, I don't know, $10 a month, maybe you're like,
Yeah. But it could be worth it.
It could be worth it. It was worth it for me. I was somebody who prides myself on being a good driver and not getting into accidents, but sometimes you're just in the wrong place at the wrong time, which, you can't really stop it from happening.
Yeah.
And that's why we have car insurance. So
Yeah. Well, thank you, Riley, so much for sharing your story with us.
thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be on the other side of the microphone, I guess you could say.
That's such a great story. I really hope that can help our listeners kind of see how these coverages act in real life.
Yes. Yes, for sure.
Okay. All right. I think it's time to hit the frequently asked questions.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right, Sarah, let's get into the FAQs. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So why do I need car insurance at all?
So the main purpose is to protect yourself financially and legally. Accidents are expensive and liability coverage helps keep you compliant with the law.
All right. How does your car insurance deductible work?
When you submit a claim, you have to pay the deductible before your insurance will kick in. So let's say you have a $500 deductible. You'll pay that $500 before your insurance company covers your claim. There's no deductible on liability insurance, but raising your deductible on your comprehensive and collision insurance, if that's what you have, is a very easy way to lower your rate. But make sure you know this, you're on the hook. So make sure you can afford that new deductible.
So is liability insurance coverage enough?
It really depends. Honestly, crashes are really, really expensive. So it may not cover everything. Liability coverage will meet your legal minimums, but it won't pay for your own repairs after a crash.
Yes. So what happens after I file a claim?
Your insurer will investigate the claim, and then it will estimate the damage and then pay for repairs up to your limits.
And do car insurance rates typically increase after a claim?
Usually, yes, especially at-fault claims, unless you have accident forgiveness.
So how do I know how much coverage I need?
If you have a loan or a lease, you likely need to carry full coverage. So besides that, legally, you need to have your state minimums, but that's just kind of the starting point. So you want to consider how much money you have saved, how much of that can actually be used on car repairs, your car's value, and then the likelihood of an accident where you live, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. Actually, yeah. And just to point out, kind of, Riley was commuting in an urban area, right?
Yes.
So I feel like that's something to keep in mind. If there's a higher likelihood of an accident, it might be good to have that coverage. Okay. So how does gap insurance work if your car is totaled?
So gap insurance covers the amount you owe on your loan if your car is totaled, and the payout doesn't cover the amount you still owe on your car. So insurance only covers the current depreciated value of your car. If there's a gap in the amount of the totaled payout and what you owe on your loan, gap insurance can help cover that.
Awesome, Sarah. Okay, that is such great info to know. We're going to have a quick break, and then we're going to get back to myth versus fact.
Julia, are you tired of paying too much for your car insurance?
Yeah, who isn't?
Well, here's a straight talk. With Insurify, you can compare quotes from over 120 top insurance companies, all in one place. And you could save up to $1,100 a year, and it only takes about 10 minutes.
No phone calls? No hidden fees? It's 100% online and it's completely free?
Yep, Insurify has already helped more than 10 million people compare, including us. Now it's your turn to see how much you could save.
Click the link in the description to get started today.
All right, Julia, it is your turn.
It's my turn.
It's your turn.
Let's do it.
Okay, myth or fact, liability car insurance covers my car too.
That is a myth. Liability only covers damage that you do to others.
Okay, full coverage means everything is covered no matter what.
Definitely a myth. You are covered up to your limits. And also, very important to know that full coverage won't cover normal like wear and tear or that kind of routine maintenance. That's not included.
All right, car insurance is optional if I want to drive.
That is a myth. In every state except New Hampshire, liability auto insurance is legally required if you're driving.
If someone else drives my car, my insurance covers it.
That is typically a fact. In most cases, your insurance follows the car, but you do need to give explicit permission. So, and some insurance companies will only cover declared persons on the policy, which basically means their names need to be on your policy.
Yeah.
And many states also have stipulations about that. So it's smart to kind of check your state laws on that, but you'll probably be okay.
Hey everyone, this is Editor Sarah here. I just want to give a little bit of clarity on the point that Julia just made. So permissive use gets a little bit sticky if you don't have your own insurance. Obviously, a good rule of thumb is to have your own insurance, but if you drive someone else's car and you don't have your own insurance, if you cause an accident, you may still have to cover all of the damages, so you're still on the hook. If you're planning on driving someone else's car, often maybe you're like a care nurse for someone, or you're living with your parents and you want to drive their car often, you can look into what's known as a non-owner policy. All right, back to our show. Okay, myth or fact? You have to pay your deductible every time you file an accident claim.
That is a fact if you have full coverage. Liability doesn't have a deductible. So yes, if you're filing a claim for like comprehensive or collision to cover damage to your car, then yes, you would have to pay your deductible every time. It's not like just once in a year, like a medical deductible. You know what I mean? It's different. Yeah.
Okay, last one. Myth or fact? You always have to submit a claim if there's damage to your car.
Oh, okay. I'm so glad we're including this. That is a myth, but with the important stipulation that every situation is different. So some things that you might consider here. You might not submit a claim if the damage costs less to repair than your deductible. Basically, the damage costs, let's say $500, and you have a $1,000 deductible. Why would you pay the deductible?
Yeah.
You're just going to cover that damage. You might not file a claim if you only have liability coverage and you damage your car by accident. So you're responsible for the damage, let's say by hitting a telephone pole, maybe scratching it against a parking garage, etc. Basically, any incident where like someone else isn't involved, right? You might not file a claim if the damage is just cosmetic, right? There's no injuries. Maybe you like scrape the paint or something, and it's something maybe you can live with or even repair yourself or just repair relatively cheaply, right? You might not file a claim if it's a minor accident and both parties, both parties agree to a private settlement. Always be thoughtful there. You want to make sure you're both in agreement about that. I really want to emphasize, though, that every situation is different, and that if you are in an incident, let's say, kind of in that last example around both parties agreeing, still, like we were saying earlier, get all that info. Gather all that info, get contact info, take pictures. Always better to have it. And if it ends up being relatively minor, not a big deal. Hey, that's fine. You know what I mean? So definitely something to consider. And you don't have to file a claim like immediately if it's something relatively minor. And this is something that you're considering. But just, slow down, take time, and really consider the right move for you.
Yes, definitely. All right, let's get into our action plan.
Amazing. Yes. All right. Get out your pens and pencils, everybody.
Okay, here's your step-by-step plan to understand and choose the right auto insurance coverage.
We're going to start by checking your state's minimum liability requirements and reviewing your coverages to decide what you actually want and need.
So decide if you want full coverage or liability only, if you want like those extras like accident forgiveness, rental car reimbursement, and then you're going to look at your deductible and you're going to adjust if you can or if you want to.
Exactly. Very important. You're going to get some quotes. You're going to compare at least 3 to 5 companies to find the cheapest option. Just make sure you're getting the best deal you can get. And you're going to ask each insurer about discounts and those optional coverages that Sarah was mentioning.
Yeah, and so you want to revisit your policy every renewal because life or record changes can affect your rate. So I think that's another reason why we always recommend a 6-month policy. If you got big changes coming up, if you're going to turn 25, if you're getting married, if an accident is going to drop off your record, choose a shorter time policy so you can get those cheaper rates sooner.
Exactly. That's a really good point.
All right, let's wrap this up.
Let's do it.
So the bottom line is understanding how car insurance works helps you buy smarter and avoid surprises.
Yes. And it's not about memorizing every term, much as we love to explain our terms here at No Dumb Questions. It's about knowing what protects you and what protects others and where you can save, of course.
Yeah. Think of it like learning the rules of like a board game. Like once you get them, you can actually win, but it can take a couple practice rounds, if you will, before you actually get the concept.
Absolutely. And comparing car insurance, that is truly your cheat code.
Definitely. All right. That's it for today's episode of No Dumb Questions.
Please subscribe, share with a friend who's also tired of paying too much for car insurance, and send us your questions using the link in the description.
Until next time, drive safe and save money.
You are listening to No Dumb Questions, an Insurify podcast. This content does not constitute personalized financial or legal advice. This podcast is written, edited, produced, and recorded by Sarah Getman, Julia Taliesin, Riley Hines, and Sydney Harrell. Compare insurance quotes by clicking the link below.